Hi, everybody. Can confirm, as Paula said, my name is Bart. But before we get into a little bit more about our guests, putting on a co-located event is no joke. Has anybody ever organized a birthday party? Maybe? All right, that's hard. A co-located event's like 100 birthday parties, or maybe even 1,000, depending on what kind of birthday party you organize. I just want to give a massive shout out before we get started to Paula Kennedy. Lots and lots of work, countless hours, lots of things going on. That being said, this will be an action-packed panel that you will certainly not forget. However, it's so action-packed that there won't be time for questions from the audience. The questions will be continued with a drink, with a beverage of your choice afterwards, all right? So just keep that in mind. You can save your questions for later. One of the things I want to honor in this panel is time. And sometimes when you give panelists too much time to introduce themselves, they take way too long. So I'm going to introduce them. Person directly to my right. Her name is Cortney Nickerson. She runs community at Nirmata. She is also a CNCF ambassador, co-organizer of CNCF Bilbao, where I'm also based. And she does lots of amazing things. Let's give her a round of applause. Then, to her right, he is Italian. He's in Amsterdam. When he's not doing amazing cloud native stuff at GitHub, he also is a musician. He's a singer. He helps other people how to sing. He helps everyone around him, regardless of what they're doing, to grow. His name is Matteo Bianchi. Let's give him a round of applause. To his right, we've got another Italian who's also based in Amsterdam. There's a pattern here, folks. His name is Rizzo, also a CNCF ambassador, absolutely rocking the BIPOC group in the CNCF if you're interested in that. He's doing all wonderful things there. His name is Rizzo. Let's give him a round of applause. And last but certainly not least, she comes from my home state of California. She's from the great city of Bakersfield, but she's out on the other coast in Vermont. She just spent some time in New Zealand, why she has a wicked tan. She's an incredible person. Also KCD New York co-organizer. She's rocking all things developer relations at TestKube. Her name is Kelly Revenaugh. Let's give her a round of applause. We're going to keep it on Kelly's side, all right? The title of this panel is, all right, so we're talking about building thriving communities of platform engineering. We've talked a lot about platform engineering. I'm going to insist, I'm going to beg, I'm going to plead with all of our panelists that they always make an effort to incorporate platform engineering and community into their answer, right? Don't run off too far in one tangent or on the other, all right? That being said, Kelly, why should anyone care about the community side of platform engineering? Why?
Good question. I think overall, right, you can't really force adoption of a platform. You can build this really, really great platform and this great software, but if nobody uses it, it's just another software tool. Where I think with platform engineering, the community portion of it is huge. And if you incorporate community aspects of getting feedback and listening to people and things like that, your platform will explode compared to just assuming a lot of things about your internal users.
That's great. I mean, KubeCon after KubeCon, you know, Ram had some pretty hot takes in his lightning talk about, you know, some of the ways that startups are approaching this. We go to every KubeCon and we see some startups that sometimes feel like they're answering a question that nobody asked. And all the things that Kelly mentioned, I think, are great ways to approach that. Now, Matteo, we're going to move it over to you. In the build versus buy dichotomy, all right, this is something that's been talked about a lot today. But in your experience, what can you share on that? Is it that a complete dichotomy, or is there a space for different routes? And what role does community play in that?
So I would say that it can be a dichotomy in some cases. Like if you have a small team, or if you have like one or two products, you might, one or two like internal products, I mean. You might want to just build them internally, and that's absolutely fine. If you're a bigger company, let's say a bank, like we had the panel before, building is an option, but also buying, since you have already compliance and governance embedded in it. And the community side, well, just coming to KubeCon and actually asking other people what do they do in their own company, asking about their use case, doesn't need to go into the neat and deep details, but it's like something that's really valuable. And for me, it has been to understand like what also consultants have done for their customers, like David, who's a platform consultant. There are many, many different facets to the same dilemma, to this build versus buy. And I would say there's no one fits all. It's always about balancing the aspects. And you can even build some parts of your platform and buy others. Like in my case, as a consultant, I bought many times observability platforms and then integrated with the rest of it, because observability was a bit more difficult with smaller teams to achieve, and we focused on the application delivery side built internally instead.
Okay. Cortney, going to turn it over to you. Matteo talked about the element of balance. We're thinking about balance in the technical sense, but also in the human sense, right? So what roles or backgrounds have you seen set someone up for success as a platform engineer, and how does that influence their approach to getting their platform adopted? And how can communities, in addition, give more spaces for these roles and backgrounds? Get ready for a hot take, folks.
That is a very layered question. So I think starting off, I've spent quite a bit of time in the platform space and was very lucky to participate in the first platform engineering day and put together a panel. And on that panel, I had very expert people, including William, but I also had two unexpected people on that panel, Abby Bankser, which is she's been mentioned all day today because she is the face of a lot of platform community, as well as platform expertise. And she comes from a QA background. She didn't study anything technical. She has a very well-rounded aspect of life long before she was involved in this space in tech, and that has definitely set her up to be as exponentially successful and insightful as she is. And at the same time, I also had a co-speaker at that event who also came from QA and works for SAP, and she was leading the platform at that time. And as time has gone since that first platform engineering day, I've come across quite a few other roles and people in the community that we see all the time. Atul Sharma is one of them. He also comes from a QA background and leverages a huge amount of his knowledge from doing developer relations and community-oriented events to help people incorporate aspects of their platform and get them adopted. So I think QA is a big one. I also was talking to Steve Wade about this earlier today. He does a lot of work with customers and helping to get their platforms put together. And he was telling me that a lot of times he sees most successful teams that combine software engineers who understand the actual needs of the developer team and have taken an interest in the actual integration of their infrastructure, as well as UX experts who build a platform that people want to use and is easy to use, and take into consideration different aspects of usability of that in order to help people actually be excited about getting started with things. So I think there's a broad array of people that can be very successful in this space. I also have to say, all the time we're hearing people talk about team topologies, but also we hear people talk about women's voices in this space. There are so many women who are leading platform engineering, whether it's the books that they're writing, the talks that they're giving. We've heard from quite a few of them today. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we're constantly figuring out how to communicate ourselves, understand what's going on, feel like we belong. And a lot of times those are the human issues of platform, right? It's not always tech. A lot of times it is a human issue. One of my favorite things that I've seen so far, especially with Kartik Sintasso, is that they don't take a who's at fault approach. They take a make a promise and keep it approach. And I find that to be a lot more open and community oriented and inviting to have people actually help you with the different things going on. So I think there's a lot of different aspects and roles that should be included in the space, because platforms don't serve just one role. They serve quite a large array of people and solve problems for very different people. It's not just a developer aspect. We're serving a lot of things here.
Okay, great. So we've got a better look now at the people side of things. William, I'd like to turn it over to you. If we're thinking about structural organizational aspects, what are some of the common organizational structures that you have seen in organizations, and how do these relate to the success of the platform initiatives?
That's a good question. I want to answer with the opposite scenario, with what I've seen fail. Health organization, in a European health organization, not making any names, I have actually helped them implement quite a large platform, and helping the strategy of leadership, the stakeholders of the platform, to implement, to adopt, and they have cascaded this mandate to adopt the platform, to move faster somehow, or what our friend before was saying, accelerate. So I did my job, right? I helped them achieve this goal of creating this platform, this application delivery platform, and Kubernetes, whatever portal on top, which was not the one with the big B. Ultimately, it failed halfway. The reason why it failed halfway is because it's an healthcare organization. They have very strict parameters of working. They have very strict protocols. And this method of working of platform that we have in platform engineering, where move fast, accelerate, the reduction of cognitive load, and all these Kubernetes beautiful things, everything that we say didn't fit with their model of operandi, so with their modus operandi. So their operation team was not part of the picture in this platform. They were the legacy. They were the guys that were moving slower. So they were not involved by the upstairs. They were not part of those conversations that I was having with them. So I feel that I failed them. They helped fail, even though the platform was looking good and shiny, and they could eventually deliver. Initially was very dramatic. So what was planned to be something like an 18 months plan, it turned out to be a 24 months plan, so a 24 execution plan. So what I see failing is when the organization is a top-down approach without taking into account the legacy that we have in place. So when, like Matteo says, buy versus build, I would say, look at what you have in-house, look at the legacy aspects that fit your strategy, get on board somebody that can understand what you can adopt from what you already have in place. Those are your enablement guys, and what you need to buy to bring you wherever you need to be. So,
great, thank you for sharing. Kelly, with that in mind, if you had to start a platform team from scratch tomorrow, what's the first community-oriented step that you would take?
I would start interviewing everyone. I would start kind of asking the team what they like, what they don't like, what their problems are, instead of assuming a lot of things. I think there's kind of a lot of edge cases that come up that if you kind of, again, take this top-down approach, that don't really ever come up, or voices don't get heard once you start building something without asking beforehand. So I'd start with that. I would start, I don't know, kind of having one-on-one conversations with different development teams within your organization, and get as much feedback in the beginning than as you're building it.
Matteo, what would you like to add to that regarding do's and don'ts, good strategies for building an effective platform team?
So I would say, on top of what Kelly just said, I would also involve those developers to build it. Like, the ideal dream that I have is being able to take at least like one developer from each department to come together at least like once a week or whatever and contribute actively to the roadmap and to shaping the roadmap of the platform. Of course, like bringing the feedback of the whole team, but I know that it's not feasible to get like 1,000 developers in the same room, even if virtually. So like taking the leaders that take the feedback from their team and bringing it up in a consistent way when you build it at the beginning, but also while you're building it.
Great, thank you. Cortney, turning it over to you. Let's see. So in your experience, what's your go-to strategy for turning developer feedback into meaningful platform improvements? We've talked about, when it comes to adoption, having to be open, get that feedback, not just assuming that everything's going to work. So how do you approach that, and how does community play a role in that?
Yeah, community plays a massive role in this, because if people don't feel like they're involved in what's going on, they're definitely not going to give you much feedback, right? They don't think that you're going to even listen to what they say because you didn't take into consideration their needs, wants, or ideas beforehand. So I think leading off of what Kelly was saying, interview everyone, get more voices heard and involved is probably the first step to actually doing that strategically, is starting off there. But then as you move forward and you start to receive feedback from people, you need to diversify the feedback, have feedback coming in from different people, places, and events that are going on. Have a way to actually accumulate that. But then also in other discussion, again, with my good friend Steve earlier today, he was talking about once you have that feedback, you have to do something with it. And that doesn't mean making an executive decision about it. It means taking ownership. Who has ownership of this feedback to then talk to others and make a decision about how you're going to proactively integrate changes? And I think the biggest thing is, and this happens, doesn't matter if it's platform or if it's just application development in your CI/CD pipeline, you get feedback about something, and a lot of times it sits there, and we don't actually take ownership and assign it to anyone to proactively do this. And in community spaces like an open source project, when somebody has an issue or they have a feature, it gets assigned to someone. Someone takes ownership of this. They then include other people to help them build this. And so you see that community already integrated into places that we're all participating in. And so one of the biggest things is not just ask for feedback, but then have somebody take ownership of that feedback to make sure that it actually transitions into a change.
Wow. Succinctly said. If you don't know, by the way, Steve, can you raise your hand? Just so folks can find you. I just want to mention, shout out to Steve, but also I think the references that Cortney was mentioning there in terms of getting that feedback can come from multiple different sources. Just in this room, we have people that are participating in online communities, in-person communities. Paula runs the platform users group, I believe, in London. Is that correct? Yes. And we also have Shweta, who wrote a book about platform engineering. So like I said, we have different ways. It's not one size fits all, but getting out there and really feeling for what people are caring about, that's definitely going to make a big difference. Now, one thing when we're talking about community, something that can get a little bit slippery sometimes, is we're looking at metrics, right? So oftentimes we look at an open source project, we talk about health metrics. People might say GitHub stars. I think it was Brian Douglas in a talk a few years ago that I was at in London mentioned that GitHub stars are great, but looking at things like pull requests, because it shows that someone's actually taking the time to make the effort to get that up there, they're exposing themselves, they're in a position of vulnerability. I want to throw this out to you, Matteo. What are things that can look like community-based actions when it comes to platform engineering that might not be the easiest to track, but things that you find meaningful and valuable?
So I would say that, well, you can use inner source practices, first of all. You can have your code being open, tracking the amount of issues and pull requests that are in your code. It's a great indicator of the health, at least of the development of your platform. And then for the metrics on the other side, the business metrics, the one that really pay the bill for the platform, you gotta involve the C-levels, you gotta involve the stakeholders, as William said. So you gotta make them speak with your engineering team, your product team, your platform engineering team, and really understand what is the value that they deliver to the business. Sometimes it's software, so Dora metrics maybe are great. Sometimes it's something else. Like, I'm taking the example of Blanco that I see there. A bank, it's financial services. Like, what is the uptime of those services? What are the number of features that we are getting out? What is the velocity of those features? Like, those are all metrics that you can track. Again, it's not also about just the metric, but it's the trend of those metrics. Sometimes we focus just on the number in the absolute, but it's the trend that really matters and can give you an insight on what is going on and how the platform is moving forward. So that's my take.
Fantastic. So you mentioned an aspect of trends. There is a trend out there, William, this will be for you, that seems to disagree with the distinction between enablement and platform team that we see in team topologies. What is your view on the matter, and how can we use this divergence for the benefit of organizations?
That's a good question.
You're welcome. Go to myself.
So, I believe that the divergent trends are actually both correct. It's the size of the organization that matters, is not the trend. So we can have a platform team, which is a transitory team, so meaning that is not somebody that has that job throughout their, let's say, that is that role. So we want to build, in that case, with a small organization, we have enablement teams. We don't have platforms teams. That's what I've seen working, at least. So in a small organization, enablement team would mean a team that is formed to build, to do a job. We have our database specialist, we have our front end, our back end specialist, our observability. We call in whoever we need, we build that capability, we move forward. We make sure that they talk to the developers and they have this, this community built with this good relationship with the users of the platforms, and they build that platform. On the other end, on large organizations, we have seen this not working because there are a lot of moving parts in a large organization. Somebody cannot be doing a job one day and a job another day. So we need that platform team, but we need also the enablement team. And the enablement team is what we are going to call, we often see them as specialists. I was talking with an unnamed individual 2 days ago where he received quite a substantial funding from his stakeholders to build an enablement team of specialists to accelerate these financial organizations' target. So I believe, so to cut it down to the answer, I believe that what's written in team topologies applies if we put it in context. I believe what that diverging thing that was written in an article, I suppose, called "Don't Call It a Platform," it also applies, but it's a very limiting factor because, and it doesn't take into account the platform itself, but just the people that build it. So we cannot separate the two things.
Thank you. Yeah. Good. Regarding that element of, sometimes looking at inside a company, an internal community. Matteo, I want to direct this question to you, and anyone else that wants to jump in to provide feedback. With platform engineering, sometimes as an example, showing that the team that's building the platform are building a product and that they have internal customers and those are developers. And that might be a bit of a paradigm shift for some folks that have been working for a while and not necessarily thinking of things that way. But Matteo, in your experience, what can be ways that friction can be reduced when it comes to the construction of building a platform, the feedback loops that are going to be going on there? Oftentimes we talk about the technical problems, but it seems that people problems oftentimes are much bigger. What's your take on that?
So I would say that one of the techniques that I've used before are simply hackathons. Like involve your developers even in scoped frame of time, like to just participate to building the platform or even to just build a part of it, have office hours, have enablement sessions, like actively have one of your platform engineers take time 1 hour, 2 hours per week to just be there and answer questions about the platform, take the feedback directly in a very lightweight way, like just talking. It doesn't have to be always a form and structured. Yeah, that's great. I think forms are great, especially at the beginning. But once you are up and running with your platform, and that's like the day 2 kind of thing, you should involve the community in more like interactive ways, like less structured, like less businessy, and more like on a community and personal level too.
I think that's a great point. Oftentimes, we've probably all worked in companies where maybe the boss says, my door is always open. Well, that's good, but you actually need to go out and talk to people. It's not enough. Some people might be shy. They might feel uncomfortable. It's not the only way to communicate. Now, we're getting towards the end. I know a lot of you are probably thirsty thinking about that wonderful beverage you're going to have, but you're not going to leave just yet. Before we leave, I'd like each one of our panelists to think about concrete, actionable items, concrete things that the folks here in this audience or people that are going to watch this video later on, what are things that they can do to better their community approach when it comes to building platforms? Whether it's attending meetups, reading books, what's your take on that? All right, so for each one of you, I'd like to give you a minute to explain what are the key takeaways here, what are the concrete things that you want to leave the audience with, so they can have practical things that they can use in their lives as they continue their work on platform teams. Cortney, going to start with you.
Gee, thanks.
Well, for starters, get more women on your teams. I'll leave it at that.
Yes, definitely have diversified teams, and diversified as in not just women, but diversified in the roles that are participating in what's going on. I think is highly important. Grow awareness. Understand that just because platform is like the heart that's beating in your chest, it is not for everybody else who's not on your platform team. So grow awareness, get people excited about what you're doing, and part of that is being part of their community. If you're part of their community, they will be happy to be part of your community. It's always, always, always going to be something that when you give, other people will be more than happy to give back to you. And actually what you're asking them to do is give you their time and their trust that what you're building for them is going to be useful and make their life better. So the more you give and form part of their community to understand them, the more they will give you in terms of trust to adopt your platform. But grow awareness about what you're doing and why this is important to you to make their lives easier. Understand that they're humans and that you want them to have a better life. So those types of things, making sure that you're taking in the human aspect, I think are primordial to actually get people to buy into what you're doing.
Love it. For it is in giving that we receive. Matteo, what's your take?
So mine is a very hot take. Documentation is part of your platform. It's fundamental and it's a shared responsibility. Also the users, not only the platform engineers, can write documentation, can correct or fix it, can enhance it, can do whatever they want, just make it functional. And think about documentation at any step, because without a good documentation, only people building the platform are able to use it effectively. Document everything, use contracts, even like open API, like document things from the API to the GUI, everything. That's it.
Thank you. William?
On my side, I'm a consulting architect at heart. So for me, have a team, have a product owner, have the people of the platform being able to translate the metrics, the costs for the stakeholders, for those that are actually going to pay for that platform to be built. Give them metrics that they can understand from the build, produce, maintain, deliver, and actually deprecate as well. What is that roadmap looking like? How much does it cost? They need to have parameters to understand the value of that piece of thing that you are building. So that's my take.
Thank you. Kelly?
I'm going to go super community focused. I think kind of taking in consideration your role or how you are at communities you're already in. So taking a look at something like this, like Platform Engineering Day, and figuring out what you like from it and what you don't like from it, and like how that facilitates a lot of the community, and taking that back with you to build your own. I think there's also getting involved in those kind of days where at KCD New York or at meetups and things like that, where you can kind of practice building community or see how others build community and take that back with you to your own.
Fantastic. That being said, folks, I think this was a wonderful conversation. Do you agree? If so, let's give a round of applause to our panelists. Thank you very much for joining. Paolo, would you like to say a few words before we go off and find a beverage?
Thank you, Bart. Okay, so big round of applause for our panel. We'll let them all step down.
And plug this.